Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the South County Fire Board of Commissioners regular board meeting for September 3rd, 2024. I'll go ahead and call us to order and ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next up is item number or the approval of the agenda. Commissioners, you have the draft agenda in front of you. I don't have any adjustments for the agenda. Is there anything else for the agenda?
Nope.
Anything else? If not, I will move the draft agenda that you see in front of you. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Fernhoff is moved to seconded to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That brings us to the consent agenda. Item number 4, which includes 4A, the July 2024 payroll summary and authorization, and 4B, the September 3, 2024 claims vouchers totaling $895,668.86. I will move the adoption of the consent agenda items. Is there a second?
I'll second
It's
that.
been seconded by Commissioner Chan. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Any request for discussion on the consent agenda? If not, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That takes us to item number 5, which is the meeting minutes. Approval of the meeting minutes. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes in item 5A, which is the August 13, 2024 work session and the August 20th, 2024 regular meeting. I will move the adoption of those 2 sets of meeting minutes. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Teofilak. Moved and seconded to adopt the meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? If not, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we'll move forward in the agenda then to item number 6, which is the swearing-in ceremony for new Deputy Chiefs Don Welch and Todd Weigel. And we'll have Chief Eastman. Good evening, Chief Eastman.
Good evening, Chair, Board, and honored guests. Chief Anderson is going to do the honors of swearing in the 2 new deputy chiefs in his division. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief or Assistant Chief Anderson.
Yeah, good evening, Commissioners.
Good
So tonight we have 2 really outstanding employees come from our Battalion Chief Corps that they were stationed on Station 15. I couldn't be more proud of these 2 selections for Deputy Chief. They've hit the street running pretty hard just in the last couple of weeks and have already started to make a really good impact on the division. So it's my privilege and honor to swear them in tonight, and they do have family relatives selected for badge meeting after we swear them in. So Todd Weigel and Don Welch, can you please come up? All right, raise your hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Don Welch. Do hereby declare that my fundamental duty is to serve the people of South County Fire.
I do hereby declare that my fundamental duty is to serve the people of South County Fire.
I swear to protect, safeguard, and preserve life, health, and property against fire and other perils, and to maintain a proficiency in the fire service.
I swear to protect, safeguard, preserve life, health, and property against fire and other perils, and to maintain a proficiency in fire service.
As a chief officer, I will uphold the standards of my profession and position, serve the people and members of the Regional Fire Authority, and will share my knowledge and skills with my colleagues and firefighters I am assigned to lead.
As a chief officer, I will uphold the standards of my profession and position, serve the people and members of the Regional Fire Authority, and will share my knowledge and skills with my colleagues and firefighters assigned to lead.
As a member of the senior leadership team, I will continue to support the organizational mission.
As a member of the senior leadership team, I will continue to support the organizational mission.
I will lead the prevention division to the best of my ability with fairness and no prejudice.
I will lead the prevention division to the best of my ability with fairness and no prejudice.
I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of the Regional Fire Authority, public faith and trust, and accept so long as I am true to the ethics of the fire service.
I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of the Regional Fire Authority, public faith and trust, and accept so long as I am true to the ethics of the fire service.
Congratulations. So if I could get the representative for Todd Waggle up here to pin badge, please. You bet. Excellent. Mr. Welch, if I can get the representative for Chief Welch. You want to get a picture with them up here?
So before we do pictures, I guess I just want everybody to know, we've had some huge changes in the Fire Marshal's division in our fire agency. I don't know if Dawn and I don't know if they realize what they just stepped into, because we're doing this very, very different than we've done before, where we've as a result of actions by the board, the Fire Marshal's office is a core function of what we do versus how it used to be, which was contract with our cities. And so as a result of that, they have a lot of work to do in creating what our Fire Marshal's office will actually look like, not just today, but set the stage for what it's going to look like in the next 10 to 15 years. So on behalf of me and the executive team, I'm looking forward to where you guys go. And I know that Todd and the rest of the folks in the Fire Marshal's office are looking forward to where you take them, and so am I. So thanks.
Chief, do we want to take a little break for,
Yeah, if we
those-
could take
Yeah.
a break and pictures for the family.
so we'll take a brief recess, 5-10 minutes for a few photos, have a little coffee, and then we'll resume. So being about 5 to 10 minute recess. Thank you. Okay, we are back on the record from our brief recess after the swearing in ceremony. And in just a moment, up next will be a public comment. Before we get to that, I want to introduce Greg Kircher, who is our new Mountain Lake Terrace liaison, joining us here at the South County Fire Board of Commissioners. And liaison, Mr. Kircher, we generally call our liaisons liaison Kircher here. And we're a little bit formal at the board in session. And so I wanted to see if you'd like to, well, first I'd like to say welcome to your first meeting with us. And I wanted to see if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm happy to serve the people of Mountain Lake Terrace, and I definitely have a lot to learn. I will just say, as a building inspector, it was kind of, because I came from being a home inspector, it was really interesting to know that, like, the structure of a roof is really important, because not because it needs to do anything except keep a firefighter from falling through it. We've had a couple fires, and I've gotten to walk through them, and it's been interesting to see how the building code actually does work to save people's lives. So I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
All right. All right, then, moving forward then in the agenda, we have item number 7, which is public comment. So we'll start with public comment first in the room, see if there's any request for public comment. Any request for public comment in the room? Let me turn next to our Zoom platform and ask Ms. Blankenship, but do we have anybody on Zoom requesting public comment?
We do not.
No one on Zoom requesting public comment. I'll come back lastly then to the room if there's anybody that wishes to have any public comment in the room. Not seeing any requests for public comment. Thank you. I will move forward then. We will move forward then in the agenda to item number 8, which is the fire chief's report. And I'll welcome again Chief Eastman.
Thank you, Chair Kenny, commissioners, staff, liaisons. So we're there's several people that are to brief you in the chief's report tonight. So if we go to the first slide, here's the map of how the precincts voted with our benefit charge measure that passed last month. And I guess we sent this out to the board in an independent email. And I just wanted to make sure if there's any questions that any of the commissioners had or the liaisons had with result to our election results, we'd be here to answer. We've been doing this a long time, and we've been creating maps like this for a long time, and I don't think we've had one yet that had all but one precinct in the entire service area with a better than 50% vote. So from staff's perspective, to be honest, I was a little bit speechless, which doesn't happen to me very often. And when I look at the work that our communication director Hines and the rest of the staff in that office, this is a true and direct reflect of the service that the men and women in this organization provide to the citizens we serve. And that's not just limited to the folks in uniform with a badge. We have several interactions with the public on an everyday basis with our admin civilian staff. It's easy to point to the fire engines and the transport units, and they are a good chunk of it. But when you get an election result like this, administration does their job. But when you get close to 70% of a yes, that's truly related to the interactions that the staff, whether they're uniform or not, have with the public we serve. And so from a fire chief's perspective, it put a big smile on my face as a result of this is how the organization's looked at by the people we serve. And there's no better validation than that. And I will let you know that we sent a letter to the organization as a whole, signed by both Commissioner Kenny and myself, thanking those that work for us for truly the results, because it is a direct reflection of the work that everybody in this organization does. And so that's my commentary that goes along with it. But I want to make sure that if there's any other questions that the commissioners have a result with it or as a result of the map.
Any questions from the commissioners, board members? Commissioner Chan.
Do you take a more deeper dive into why the high percentages versus the low percentages, people? No.
No, because when you look, I think we didn't go that. We looked at the one precinct that was below, and Christy can give you a quick overview on that. And the other ones that are 00 are ones that don't have any registered voters, or it's less than 5, which they don't post. So I'll let Christy respond to the one that was no.
Yeah, the one that was a no was Mill Creek District 7. It's a less populated district than most of the other districts in Mill Creek. It's an area just west of the town center, has just over 24 properties. There's 70 registered voters there, and I believe 29 people actually voted. So we're talking about a very, very small amount of people. Just over half of them did vote no. I believe it's about 17 no votes. So
Would there be a more cosmopolitan, like city center, like Monarch Terrace or Linwood? Would that be a higher or then the real difference?
I think when I talked to Director Hines about it, to be honest, we had overwhelming support across the RFA as a whole. And even if you look at I mean, if you look at the ones that were 50%, between 50 and 60, it's really a small number. We really were high in the 60s almost everywhere. I mean, it's quite impressive. And so Commissioner Chan, we didn't go look at that
difference.
level just as a result of, it was
No, I'm.
no pockets,
I'm
right?
very impressed that, I mean, it's well, we have a history, got support from, so that's a reflections of our firefighters and you guys' job. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Eastman on this benefit charge renewal election issue? No, great.
Next slide, please. I'm happy to announce we have 6 new employees that are doing their 2-week orientation prior to going to the Fall Academy, right? Fall Academy, right? Fall Academy. Myself, along with the 3 assistant chiefs, had an opportunity to go briefly talk to them this afternoon. And I'm looking forward to having them get sworn in with you, but I want to let the board know we have six people going to the academy in the fall. And you'll hear more about them when it gets closer to when they graduate. Next slide. And I'm going to turn this over to Chief Isotelo.
Good evening. It was my honor last week to attend the Wednesday night drill for our volunteers. Director Cullen went with me. And the reason for our visit was we had 7 members complete their 1-year probation. And so that was Michael Bohm, Michael Fernahoff, Maddie German, Al Gingras, Connor Matson, Justin Nguyen, and Michael Rowland. So we had a nice visit and they all got their official department badge signifying their hard work and completion of their 1-year probation. Next, Chief Eastman asked me to brief the board on Saturday, August 31st, so last Saturday, from about 2 p.m. until 8 p.m. Snow 911 had a significant CAD outage. It affected CAD and the internet system to Snow 911, so it was fairly significant. It also affected their backup system. And so we assembled our team. The radios did still work, but the dispatchers were taking the calls and literally writing notes on a piece of paper and then going over to the TAC channel. And so DC Wells responded to Snow 911 to assist with the dispatching. DC Hughes came here to headquarters in this room and assisted with the Fire Operations Center. As you may recall, we bring the chiefs in and they're able to receive the calls via radio from dispatch, and then we actually dispatch our own units. We become our own dispatchers. So the Fire Operations Center, as planned, as pre-planned, as practiced, was staffed by BC Turner, BC Sessions, BC Fitzgerald, MSO East, and BC Agnes from Mukilteo Fire. So he's part of our plan as well. And since we're all in the same TAC, he comes over. I'm happy to report our folks did great. And I really want to thank the crews that worked that day. They all had to go to radio watch. There was no paging. There was no station alerting. And these folks in the Fire Operations Center dispatched successfully without any incident over 40 dispatches in that time period. So everything went as planned. I was actually at home and on the phone and texting back and forth with DC Wells and DC Hughes here to make sure they had their needs and we had everything rolling. Fortunately, they were able to find out what the problem was within their infrastructure, within their systems, and then slowly make a repair and bring it back online. And so they have communicated, Snow 911 has communicated to us that they're going to ensure that such an outage doesn't happen again, and they're investigating and looking into it and make sure that they rectify any future instances like this. But as always, South County Fire, we had a plan, we were trained, our folks came together, and one last group I would like to thank without a call or request, Support 7 showed up here at dinner time and brought the folks that were working in the FOC some dinner. And so a shout out to Shannon Sessions and her group for being on top of it and helping us out, beat our folks. So that's the briefing on the cat outage at Snow 911 this weekend.
I got a question.
Do you have a question? Oh, sorry, Chief Taylor, a question from Commissioner Chan.
So how long was this, how long was the outage?
6 hours.
6 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll let you go, Christy.
We just wanted to make sure you were all aware of our upcoming September 11th memorial ceremony. It'll be happening at Fire Station 17 at the Fallen Firefighter Memorial. This will be presented by South County Fire Union members from Local 1828 and will feature a presentation by the Honor Guard. Mayor Rosen from Evans will be speaking and several council members will also be in attendance. So we look forward to seeing some of you there as well.
Great, thank you.
Great.
And so I have just two more things to let the board know that I have tentative meetings with Mayor Rosen starting on the 9th, and we're meeting every week. I haven't had a chance to follow up with him, but it's specifically a conversation about annexing into the RFA. So I'll brief intergovernmental when we meet next, but I want to let the board know that that has started. I think with a target of April of 25. So more to know, more on that. We've been mostly via text and email, so I don't have a lot of the detail. I know the questions that you want to ask. I don't have those yet. Let me meet with the mayor and see where he wants to go and how he wants to go there. We did give him a timeline and a schedule going from, February when things have to go to the county and back. And so we've been doing some stuff on behalf of the mayor at his request. But I think next week we'll start having meetings. And right now, from him and my perspective, we'll meet weekly. And then I'll get an idea of where he's going and, their intergovernmental or their public safety committee and more to come on that. I just want to let the board know those have started and then they're actually on my calendar. So the last thing I want to brief you on is we haven't talked about a lot. Chief Maxwell sits on a task force that deals with county EMS. I guess I'll just say I tend to be the squeaky wheel when it comes to what's going on. And I've asked some questions and waiting to get some answers back. But for those that go to Snow Isle, you're going to get a brief from Commissioner Waugh, who also sits on that committee. Chief Maxwell will be on the meeting for Snow Isle. And I guess I would ask for those that are in attendance, if you have questions about what was said, please reach out to Sean. And there'll be more coming from me on this as they deliberate on where they want to go with the county EMS office. And some of that deals with dollars and cents, some of that deals with governance, and it deals with where they'll be housed. I don't have a whole lot more information. I think I have more questions for them than I've received to date. Although I will say Sean does sit on the committee and he's been well representative, not just our agency, but the agencies that he's representing on that on behalf of the chief. So I would ask because I'm sure you're going to get questions and you probably will get slightly different versions through that conversation. So please, if you have questions after the Snow Isle meeting, please reach out to Chief Maxwell or myself to make sure that you get the balanced picture of what's going on with that specifically. So with that, I have nothing further and I'll take any other questions from the board.
Questions for Chief Eastman on the chief's report? Any questions for Chief Eastman from the board members on the chief's report? Not seeing any questions. Thank you, Chief Eastman. Okay, that moves us forward then in the agenda to item number 9, which is our legal report with our attorney, Rich Davis, who is on Zoom. Good evening, Mr. Davis.
Good evening, commissioners. Hope you all had a good long Labor Day weekend. I wanted to mention a case that came out last month from the Washington Supreme Court that I found interesting. It's a First Amendment case, which I don't talk about too often, but this was this is kind of an interesting holding by the court. So it starts with the workers' compensation statutes. When a worker is injured on the job, as you know, they are entitled to L&I benefits, also known as workers' compensation payments. Sometimes L&I will require that worker to undergo an independent medical exam and also known as an IME. And IMEs are conducted by physicians that L&I has approved in advance. Those IMEs are used by L&I for a variety of reasons, sometimes to determine if the injury that was claimed was actually work-related or was caused by something else. It can be used to determine if the employee can return to duty, what limitations they may have, or it can be used to give a prognosis for an employee's return to duty. Historically, L&I has allowed, they've adopted rules. They've allowed a worker who's going to undergo an IME to have somebody in the room with them, not an attorney, not their own doctor, but some third party, just to witness the exam. Last year in 2023, the legislature amended the statute and they codified that. So they allowed by statute for the worker to have somebody with them. But in addition to that, then they said that the worker can record the IME, provided that they meet certain conditions. In other words, they have to give L&I advance notice. They're going to record the IME. If they do record it, they have to give a copy to the employer, to the Department of L&I. Can't alter the recording in any way. The recording can't interfere with the exam, and so forth and so on. And the material part of the statute that I wanted to talk about is that the legislature said that the worker cannot post that recording to social media. So while they could use the recording for their own personal reasons, they could not post it to social media. Well, before the ink really had dried on that statute, 10 workers who had been injured in the state brought a declaratory judgment action against the state, claiming that is a prior restraint on their free speech rights. And the Supreme Court took this up from an appeal and agreed with the workers that indeed social media is kind of the modern day public square. It's where people communicate, and prohibiting such postings was not a reasonable time, place, or manner kind of restriction. And as you've heard me talk before, ordinarily, when you're dealing with certain kinds of forums where people have a right to speak, a government can impose a reasonable time, place, or manner restriction. But here the court said, you know, there's no time restriction at all. It's just you can never post this to social media. There's no reasonable place restriction because social media is everywhere. And it's not even a manner restriction. So that part of the statute was declared unconstitutional as being in violation of the First Amendment. The statute had provided also, I should say, a $1,000 fine if the worker had violated that. So I think the purpose of this statute was largely to give workers some ability to demonstrate what actually happens during the IME, because this is kind of naturally an adversarial process. You know, like I said, L&I is using that for various reasons that may not be in the workers' interests. Court said it's that the workers have a right and an interest in distributing those videos from time to time. So it remains to be seen now what the legislature may do. The legislature may do nothing at all, in which case that part of the statute's invalid, or they could go back and rescind the ability of workers to record, given the fact that part of the statute has now been declared unconstitutional. But interesting holding, and that's about all I have tonight. Happy to answer any questions about that, though, if there are any. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any questions for Attorney Rich Davis from the board members? Any questions? Not seeing any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we move forward in the agenda then to item number 10, which is the union report. I believe we have Matt Armstrong with us this evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff. Thanks for allowing us to be here tonight. I don't have a lot for you. Last week, members of our board e-board We're in Boston for the International Association of Firefighters Convention and doing the business of the international over there. A lot of networking. They were hung out with our members of our district, and so lots of communication with Everett and some other people within our area. It's good for us to do that, maintain good relations. We also had our local or our annual golf tournament, which was a success this year. We raised some money for charity, which was great, for our firefighters fund, so that we can distribute out to different charities. Other than that, it's still an honor to be here and to do the work that we do. And we work with amazing people from top to bottom. Thank you for my opportunity to give you a report. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the board members? Any questions from the board members? Not seeing any. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward in the agenda then to item number 11, which is our unfinished business. We start with item 11A, which is the 2025 status quo budget and long-range forecast update with our Chief Financial Officer, Chris Bothwell. Good evening, Mr. Bothwell.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. All right, so tonight I have the 2025 status quo budget results. I also have a presentation on the budget underspend analysis and an update to the long-range financial forecast. At the end of my section, I have two routine budget updates for you, one of revenue and one expenditure, and then I'll hand it over to Chief Eastman. So the status quo budget is a complete budget, and it is the result of combining the status quo revenue forecast and expenditure forecast together. And we've spent quite a bit of time on the revenue forecast and expenditure forecast separate over the past couple of weeks. And so I won't go into exactly the details in those, but I did want to remind you that forecasted revenues just include historical increases. So we talked about bank capacity and some other revenue capacity we had. Those are not included in the status quo budget. For expenditures, the only thing that's included are expenditures that are required to maintain current levels of service. So again, no one-time items and no discretionary increases or changes. The status quo budget result is that revenues are $108,800,000, and that number is unchanged since the revenue forecast was presented a couple weeks ago. Expenditures are at $114,300,000, and that number is a little bit different than what I presented before. And the reason for that is that we have updated the supplies and services based on division requests, the actual requests, and the past presentation that was based on just an inflationary adjustment added to the 2024 budget. So the result is that we have a deficit of $5.5 million. The deficit of $5.5 million assumes that every division spends 100% of their budget, which we know will not happen. So we're unlikely to realize the full deficit. And I'll get into the historical underspend on the next slide. But just for context, I also wanted to mention that the 2024 budgeted deficit was $3.1 million. So when I say underspend, budget underspend, what I'm talking about is the difference between the amount that we budget and the amount we actually spend during the year. And so this chart that's on this slide shows the actual budget underspend from 2018 through 2024, and it's just an estimate for this year. And the first thing I want to point out is that the first 3 years, so 2018 to 2020, we had higher underspend. Relative to from 2021 through what we're expecting in 2024, we're sort of in that sweet spot of 2 to 5% underspend. So for the analysis, they excluded 2018 through 2020, just so we didn't end up with an overly optimistic result. And the average underspend from 21 to 24 is $3.75 million. And so just to relate that back to the status quo budget, the $5.5 million of budgeted deficit, if we adjust it for the $3.75 million, that is the likely underspend or the average underspend, we end up with a $1.75 million deficit. That's probably in the ballpark of what we would actually expect based on those historical results. So the long-range forecast is on page 40 of your packet materials. I didn't put it on the slide because it's really difficult to see in this format, but I'll just go through the high points. The annual operating deficit grows by approximately $500,000 per year, and it compounds. So for the long-range forecast in 2025, I just said we have a $5.5 million deficit. When we go to 2026, that ratchets up by $500,000 to 600,000. Then in 27, it goes up to $6.5 million and so on. By the time we get to 2030, the deficit grows to $8.6 million just to maintain the status quo. But I did want to highlight that underspend is a significant factor that we need to consider. And I put something on your page 40, I put a separate analysis where we actually include the average underspend too, so we can see what the trajectory is with that factored in. And the result is pretty different. So another thing I wanted to mention is that we have excess fund balance in excess of our minimum fund balance target in the general fund. And so that excess is available to fund the deficit. If we look at the $5.5 million deficit, we're good with our minimum fund balance target through 2026. If we factor in the underspend, then we can get through 2028. And I've got that on this chart. So the orange line that kind of shows a slow but steady increase, that is our minimum fund balance target. And the reason that it increases is just because we have a 90-day reserve, and that's based on operating expenditures. And so as our expenditures are expected to increase, so does the requirement for our fund balance target. The red line where you see it's the steepest one, this is based on the $5.5 million deficit. And if we were to realize 100% of that budgeted deficit, you can see the lines cross by the end of 2026. And then the green line is based on any fund balance when we take underspend into consideration. And you can see we make it up to 2028 before we run out of excess fund balance to fund that target. So I just have two routine updates that I'll touch on next, but I wanted to stop here because it's kind of a natural stopping point to see if there's any questions.
Questions for Mr. Bothwell? Commissioner Rowland.
Yes, do these figures include, I do know, maybe I'm getting ahead with the GEMT that you're going to talk about in just a second, but do these numbers that we just see include those projections as far as the revenue?
They don't.
Okay. Something else. I think I have one more question.
Any other questions? Commissioner Chin.
Yeah, but that's based on status quo, right?
Correct.
But I assume that we're gonna have increase in certain areas, so they would not be, that will be increasing some stress on that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that there will be a conversation about discretionary adds to the budget. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really my concern, especially on the capital facility plan, borrowing money and all that stuff. That's going to be quite, so we got to really think carefully on that.
Commissioner Rowland.
And then for the forecast, does this assume a 1% increase in the budget every year?
It does. It includes the historical 1% increase in property tax, and then plus the new construction, which works out to about another 1%, and then 2% on the benefit charge.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I just kind of follow up on that, now it would change if another city come and join us, right? Remember, we did the whole thing about hopefully our levy rate will be, don't we drop a whole bunch of them? And then that will be helping, because then the burden is spread out by more city now versus, contract city. So that's something we're going to think in the back of my mind. Yeah, that will help.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Yeah, what do we foresee any extra revenue from increased building? Where are we going to get the money, basically?
So we're forecasting the average new construction. So and that average is over the last decade. So we've seen a lot of, construction goes up and down. We're just forecasting the 1%. Last year, we missed the 1% by a little bit. So we have yet to see what the new construction numbers are going to be for this year. I suspect they'll be somewhere near the 1%. I think last year we missed it by maybe 0.1% or something like that. So
What other, how are we going to raise the money in other ways?
Well, we have one of the things that I mentioned when I did the revenue forecast was that there are opportunities to increase revenues that we currently have that are available just with a majority vote of the board. So those are the fire benefit charge and the bank capacity that we have for the property tax, the general fire levy. We also proposed or made a recommendation to increase our ambulance transport fees, and that would generate an additional $400,000 as well. And so that's one that will need to be voted on by the board, but that's another opportunity this year as well. So those are like kind of our three biggest opportunities.
So just raising taxes is the only way out?
And the benefit charge, I mean, those are
Taxes.
to raise revenue, yeah.
Okay. I don't know. We may not win, get such a big margin next time it goes around there on a vote for more money. What are we gonna do?
Well, actually,
Commissioner Chan.
yeah, if I kind of respond to you, what you have is basically when I said that when another city join us, so that will bring in additional revenue in there to share the thing. But in general, our levy rate is pretty low compared to all the cities around. So it's not significant. But I always go for low taxes. That's no questions about it. So that's why I'm saying that status quo even showing a deficit rating. So we gotta, think about a new way we can do things and stuff like that.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Bothwell? Yes, Liaison Kircher.
I was just wondering, what is the primary reason for an underspend?
Well, we can't go over our budget. So the organization can't spend more than is authorized by the governing body. So we have almost $110 million budget. We need to come in under that. And so there's a number of things that we budget every year that don't happen. So for example, we're going to have fewer recruits going through the academy this year. We budget 20 every year. And so there's significant savings associated with that. That's something that's happening this year. We also budget for like something like post-academy. If attrition doesn't happen exactly with like in station operations, attrition doesn't happen at the same time that we get folks out of the academy. We have a reserve in there to fund those positions until the attrition does happen. It's those kinds of things where we can't really predict the future perfectly. And so those things tend to stay in, and this organization has really, really good financial discipline. And so we don't spend that money somewhere else. It just sits in fund balance and it becomes part of our underspend.
Can I add that?
Commissioner Chan?
Well, that's because we're on a cash basis. So that means if you have money we don't spend, or of course, we'll underspend. But then the next year, we go back and adjust the money. Example is the increase of the wages on the cost of living and that type of other adjustment. A lot of times we did not come to happen on the same year. So that's why I've been, almost 20 years now, I've been trying to set, general gap called general accepted accounting principle, which is on the accrue basis. That would much more effectively really showing the economic effects of how much you really spend. Even though you spend it, you haven't paid yet, you still have to accrue on the liability on the balance sheet. So that will make us very much more clearly each year. So this kind of underspend, overspend is really on the cash basis. That's you have that. But our finance committee is going to work on that, right? In general, the deficit and all that other stuff, yeah.
Any other questions at this point in the presentation for Mr. Bothwell? If not, Mr. Bothwell, go ahead and
Thank you.
Proceed forward.
Okay, so I have two just routine updates. When we come to you with the revenue forecast and the expenditure forecast, I always tell you where there's a big ticket item that maybe we don't have all the data on yet, or that we think the data is going to get better on. And so I've got two of those for you tonight. The first one is GEMT, which is Ground Emergency Medical Transport Revenue. I had reported to you earlier, this is one of our largest revenues, and I had reported to you earlier that we hadn't received the information, the data about how much our payment was going to be in the current year. So we did get that Thursday. So it was after the packet had been published. So I wasn't able to kind of factor that into the materials in your packet. But we found that our payment for fiscal year 2023 is going to be $13.2 million. We had budgeted, and so we'll receive that this year. We had budgeted $9 million in revenue. And a couple of the reasons for that significant increase is that we paid retro during those periods. So we settled the labor contract, we paid retro, we implemented the new contract, and then we had some pretty significant capital outlays. And because we're on cash basis, we see a spike as a result of that. It will affect collections going forward too, because obviously the floor has been increased by those things as well. But the excess, so that's not budgeted, obviously. So it's like $4.2 million that's unbudgeted. We don't have any expenditures associated with it. Because we're expecting this program to not produce the same amount of revenue in the future, I just made a note here, and this is all sort of preliminary because we just got this information, but I made a note that we should consider the excess to be one time. So we'll factor it into the revenue forecast, and we use a 3-year moving average. So it will positively impact the forecast for 2025 revenue. But we just have to keep in mind that in 2026, we're likely to see a pretty significant decrease. And so we want to be thoughtful about that. And so that's your first update. And I talked to Chief Eastman today about getting an analysis put together for you on this that would show kind of the impact and the revised revenue forecast. And so we'll bring that forward at a future meeting. The other big ticket item that I wanted to give you an update on is operations overtime. I told you during the expenditure forecast that we had just pushed this forward and we had a little bit of work to do. So the original forecast was based on the 2025 budget. And we had reported to you earlier in the year that we were trending a little bit below that. So we decided on a forecasting method of using an 18-month moving average for hours and overtime cost. And the result is a $170,000 reduction in budgeted operations overtime, including the hourly cost and the cost of living adjustment. So it's fully adjusted for what we would expect to spend in 2025. And that's a $380,000 value less than what was in the status quo expenditure forecast that I presented to you last month. So just an update on that one. And I think what we're going to do at this point is use this forecasting method and just keep an eye on it. If it serves us well, we'll continue to use it. If it's not, we'll see if we can find something different. It's very difficult to predict some of the conditions that cause overtime. And so this is something we'll just kind of let evolve and hopefully get to something that works consistently. And maybe this is it. Hopefully this is it. That's it for me. I'm happy to take any questions on those last couple items. Otherwise, Chief Eastman is up next.
Questions from the board for Mr. Bothwell, Commissioner Rowland.
So going back to my previous question about the GEMT, does that mean that if we're looking at our deficit here, I don't have page numbers on these, the likely 1.75 million, that doesn't take into consideration this excess of about $4 million that will come in from GEMT?
That's correct.
So we should run a surplus, all things considered? Is that what you're saying at this point? Or?
Well, we're going to run surplus this year. So we're going to receive that extra 4.2 million this year. So the surplus would actually be realized in this year. That'll carry forward in fund balance next year. And so if that excess, that would cause additional excess fund balance. You could use that. I mean, those are resources that would be available to shore up next year's budget. I mean, that would be something that would be there. I think the more natural sort of path for that is that it's going to impact the forecast for next year. So we're going to add, so we do a 3-year moving average. So we're going to take our 2022, 2023, and 2024 collections and take the average of those and push it forward. It was 9 million last year. So when we see this spike, it's going to influence that and we're going to see additional collections. So I think that's the piece that in terms of balancing the budget or, mitigating the deficit, that's probably the bigger piece. But then again, just as a reminder, we've got 2026 coming up and that's probably going to see a significant decrease. So we want to be planning for that as well.
Gotcha. So it's not quite as dour as that first chart may have led us to believe, but we still need to do our homework and make sure that we've got everything accounted for by the end of the year to make sure that we're on track, correct?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Second question real quick. Looking back, I want to say we were looking a couple months ago at the budget for last year and kind of preliminary budget numbers. Overtime has always seemed to be, once we get in at the end of the year, above what we budgeted for. Are you saying that based off of where we're at now, we're forecasting that we will be less over or will be less than what we budgeted?
I haven't pulled the data real recently, but I think what you're referring to is the second quarter report that I did, and we were trending below budget. So if the second half of the year was the same as the first, we would trend below our budget at the end of the year.
And for, I guess, overtime consumption, does that change very much over the quarters of the year? Is it a lot more overtime, you know, in the quarter four near the holidays, or
No.
is it pretty
So it's
standard?
It's not flat. So we do see kind of peaks and valleys in overtime usage in just the data in the costs and that, like in the general ledger. But it's not consistent from year to year. So we don't see like, oh, December, everybody's on vacation. It causes a lot of overtime. We don't see that. I didn't see that sort of trend in the data over the last 3 years, which is what we looked at for that last analysis. So I think that I reported at the time that it was fairly evenly distributed when we look at the 3 years that were there. And so I guess my expectation or my prediction, maybe not expectation, but my prediction would be that we're probably going to be at or below budget by year end.
That'll be nice. I think it was last 3 years or the numbers that we had for them, we were consistently over. So it'll be good to see what actually happens there. I'll be cautiously optimistic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Bothwell? I guess I did have one question. The $4.2 million. That's good news. That's outstanding. Good work. You get credit for that. But no, that's good. I just did want to clarify when you talk about 2026 on the GEMT, that's because the formula is changing and the amount that we're likely to receive will be less in that year.
Correct.
But 2025, the money for that is based on 2024. So the formula isn't changing for the money that we would receive in 2025 based on the 2024 calendar year.
Yeah, and it's on a 6/30 fiscal year end too. So it's actually for periods that are behind us, and the cost basis, I believe, and just the calculation is going to be unchanged next year for what we'll receive in 2025.
So we've got to be worried about our 2026 budget in terms of taking that potential hit on the GEMT.
Exactly right. Yeah. Okay.
And it very well might not happen until 2027.
Oh.
I mean, we're dealing with CMS and the feds and the OIG. So there's lots of variability in when. So we anticipated it happening for 2025, and in the negotiations between the State Healthcare Authority and CMS, they stopped. And so our current state plan or state plan amendment we have with CMS, the status quo is where we are. But I will tell you that CMS and the feds have OIG looking at the state of Texas, looking at the state of Maryland, looking at the state of Florida, which were the first 3 states in the GEMT game. And so they're looking at, and ours is very lucrative to the fire service in the state of Washington. And it's how they calculate it, and it's really how they divide your total cost by, the number. We do it by the number of transports. Most everybody else is doing it by the total EMS responses. And if you figure you transport 60% of what EMS calls you go on, that reduces your reimbursement by at least 40%. So there's a lot of moving pieces with it. And so the question of when the state and healthcare authority renegotiate the state plan, I don't know. But I think in my conversations with CFO Bothwell, we need to plan on it happening next year for the fiscal year that we're currently in. And if it doesn't happen, great. But we don't want to get caught behind the 8 ball and realize, we generally are between $8 and $10 million for our GMT reimbursement, and realize you're going to lose, 40% of it, which is $4 million. I think we need to do our part and make sure that we're prepared. And if we plan for it to drop by the 40% and it doesn't, good for us. But if it does drop, then we're fiscally where we need to be, and we know and plan because it is coming. I don't know when. And if you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I said it would be happening for the 25 budget, and I'd have been wrong. But I think it's probably in the next 2-3 years. We will see some sort of plan change that will impact what we get from a reimbursement perspective.
Mr. Bothwell, for the additional money, the 13.2 as opposed to the 9 million you were expecting for the 2024 budget, will you let us know what how you're adjusting the GEMT expectation for 2025? When you have a chance to do that?
Absolutely. We'll follow up with that. And then we'll also, so yeah, we'll tell you how it impacts the forecast into 2025. And then I think beyond that, when we do kind of take a haircut on this revenue, we'll also be able to model that as part of that as well. So yeah, we'll bring that full analysis back to the board in the next couple meetings.
Well, I mean, it's mostly positive, positive news. So good. Any other questions for Mr. Bothwell on this part of the presentation? No? Okay, thank you.
So I guess I just want to take, to kind of let the board, we've done some different things with the budget development process on staff side. And I kind of want to give you kind of an overview of what we're doing because it's different than we've historically done in the past. Before, when it comes to wants and needs organizationally, we just say, put in a decision package and anybody in the organization puts in the decision package, usually funnels through the CFO's office. At some point in time, ends up on the chief's desk and chief reviews it and decides what goes in, what goes out. And that's very simplistic. What I did this year is I asked the executive team, which is the 3 ACs, the CFO, HR director, and our communications director, to solicit from the folks that work from them, their needs that they have. And we did it in a couple different ways. I wanted to know if it was to maintain current, in other words, maintain what we already do, or if it's an enhancement to what we do, or if it's new. Those are 3 questions that they needed to let the executive team know what their ask was. The other thing we asked them to do is I wanted to make sure that we did efficiencies within what we currently have, and then what the gaps were, what efficiencies we did to fill those gaps, and then the gap, what's left with the gap should support the ask that goes up to the executive leadership. And then what I did is I've kind of removed, and the 6 of them have been looking organizationally at what our needs are based on what was brought up from their staff. And then they're looking at it from the global organization's perspective and looking at what the needs are. And what I've asked them to do is not just look at our expense plan for 25, but look out 3 to 5 years. So as we talk about the budget, I have a conversation, I'm able to have a conversation with the board of not just what we're putting in the 25 expense plan. My hope is that in about 3 years from now, the expense plan, people pretty much know what it is from the conversations we have leading up to it, years before, right? And then take what you've identified in the 3 to 5 year out, and then identify what we actually really need and what we need today, versus what we need tomorrow versus what we'll need 2 years or 3 years from now, which is different than what we've done in the past. And there is a method to my madness. Part of it is historically that has landed in the chief's desk, and the chief makes those decisions, not always in a vacuum, but there's no communication back to the folks that bring the request forward, and it kind of goes into this black hole. And it's hard for one person to communicate with 400. And so we've changed some things with regards to this, where now there's direct feedback from the executive staff back to their employees that put requests in. I've got lots of different views looking at what this organization needs, both for the long term. And what we've done has been able to dwindle down what our asks are for the next 3 to 5 years, as part of the budget conversation. And then we talk about what makes the 25 expense plan or the budget for 2025, but it should also inform and continue a conversation between myself and staff and the board of what we actually need moving down in the future, right? And I want the board to know staff is looking 3 to 5 years out. And the hope is that after we do this process a couple of years, what is coming before you in the budget should be expected, because we've been having the conversation for a while and there shouldn't be any surprises. If we do have a surprise, it's one that snuck up on everybody, and we could talk about that very specific item as a need that snuck up and have a conversation about that. And so that's a little different process. I think is actually working very, very well. I think there's been some frustration with staff. as we learn through this with the executive team. Part of it's what's Eastman want, what's the chief want, what's the chief going to support, and really what I want is the executive team to look at what the organizational needs are and bring those forward, not with a dollar amount, not with how much money we can spend in the budget, but tell me what the organization actually needs so we can have a conversation between staff and you to chart a path forward for what that is and where we go from here. And so I've got a list. I want to just, because I think we'll talk more about this next week. But here's some of the things that was brought up as part of this process. We have to look at Marine 16 is getting old. If we're going to stay in the game of having a Marine unit, we got to figure out replacement for that. And the cost is more than what we originally thought. Obviously, with the Fire Marshal's office now becoming part of the general fund, we have some needs in the Fire Marshal's office that are over and above what we traditionally have done. There's going to be impact to the budget. I think we've talked about that a lot, and that's one that's there. We got some Station 15 meeting room updates from a technological perspective. An airfield, an SCBA fill station for Station 19. A scissor lift for maintenance, which is our logistics and facility folks. And we have some staff needs. We need some additional admin support in this building so our technical folks can do the technical work and not do and keep them at the technical level rather than do data entry and get the right people doing the right work. We had a conversation last year about public records and the need for help on public records. And that has turned into a conversation of, well, we need records management in general. We've dabbled in it over the last, we were doing it part as we were still District 1. So what does that mean? And there's been conversation about that. Our CRP program that are on shift, we don't backfill their overtime. And we probably should be doing that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Another person assigned in the EMS office, additional deputy fire marshals as a result of the increased workload, as a result of what we're doing with our contract cities regard to fire marshal. Additional resources, a captain in health and wellness. That's becoming a very big conversation. I know we've talked about it over, the last 12 months. We need some help from administrative support in our logistics division. Right now, I got 3 folks with no admin support. Security professional services from IT. We all know you got briefed from Chris G on that as a result of the surveys we got back, the audit we got back from the state and the other hazmat training. One of the things that I, as the fire chief, because we do work countywide in that effort, I have minimum of 2, maybe 3 hazmat techs on duty at any given day. The problem is I can't do any hazmat work with 2 or 3 people. And for me, our department and our size, if you look at the definition of who we are, we're actually a metro department. We compare to the cities of Seattle. We're by definition in that group. And I was on a fire last year. I drove from my house, which is up by Lake Goodwin, got to the fire. It was a fire that was generated by a hazmat event. And we waited 40 minutes for the rest of the county to assemble for us to actually be able to go do our work. For an organization of our size, we shouldn't be doing that anymore. We should have enough technical expertise on duty to do both hazmat and rescue. And that's part of us going from what we were to who we are becoming, which is a metro-sized department. There's not a huge cost associated with that. There's a stipend for the folks to get certified. We need to have 8 people on duty every day is the number I'm hearing, which means I got to probably have 17 on per shift. But that is fundamentally, I don't want to be sitting at an event with the chair of the board and myself trying to answer the public why we waited 45 minutes for Everett and Marysville to get there for us to actually do what the taxpayers are paying us to do. So process and technology updates, I believe that's for finance and HR. CFO Bothwell has been using Springbrook. Where we are as an organization and our conversation, is we need to make sure that the platform we're using for that's the right platform for an organization of our size. They are working, Chris and our HR director are working very, very close to streamline things, make things more efficient. Technology is one way to do that. And, you know, we need to make sure that we have the right technology for the organization of our size and meeting the needs and expectations that we have. And there's a cost associated with searching and demoing software. And then for an organization of our size, it's expensive to change those kind of softwares. And the last is with the cities annexing in that currently have annexed in, there's some staffing needs organizationally. And one of the things that I've asked Sean, Jason, and Todd to do is it's time for our organization to not be cross-staffed anymore. In other words, not have an engine company and a medic crew be the same people, and we need to go to dedicated resources, and there's a personnel ask associated with that. I think you know, about 2.5 million worth of firefighters to get the organization uncross-staffed, and I know that part of that has to deal with Everett. But for where we're going on what we're doing and to meet the needs that are coming and the density that's coming and I think we're past the point of our organization being cross-staffed with our current demand. And we need to move down that path. And then, you know, what's not in this list is what we talked about in the spring, which is extra people per shift just to maintain the current. And if you look at this, there's probably $3.5 to $4 million worth of additional asks, not including the boat, in what has been identified over the next 3 to 5 years of needs. Some of that is stuff that probably should be in our 25 budget. But I also know that we've got City of Edmonds that's, you know, most likely or probably will be on the ballot in April to annex into the RFA. And we just passed our benefit charge and renewed it for 10 additional years. And we have two sources for the most part where we get most of our funding, which is property tax, EMS, and fire levy. In this case, we're looking at bank capacity. We have roughly 7.9 million of bank capacity in the general levy. And we have the ability to collect more in the benefit charge if we choose. And the reason I bring that up is next week, I'd like to have a conversation with the board about what that is and what my ideas are with that. That may be able to staff not just what Chris showed in the preliminary of where we are with the status quo, but there are some enhancements we actually need. We talked about some of that at the beginning of the year. You know, the RFA and the general levy hasn't raised taxes past the 1% since the formation of this organization in 2018. We've kept everything at 1%. We've kept the EMS levy at 1% since we got it in 2019, and we've got the benefit charge at 2% a year. We've been very mindful of what we ask the taxpayers to fund and pay for. If you look at that same time frame, the cost of labor has gone up like 26%. And we've been fortunate. We've got cities annex in, and it has brought in additional revenue as a result of that. But I do know that as part of the 25 expense plan and some of the things that I'm looking at and would like to talk next week about is what are some of the options. I've got some ideas of taking some of the bank levy capacity, you know, looking at what we can do with the benefit charge. There's challenges with both as we have the City of Edmonds hopefully going to ballot in April to join the RFA. And so part of the reason I'm doing all this is it's the precursor for the conversation at the work session next week on kind of what Chris and I, and not just Chris and I, but the whole executive team, you know, we've talked about this and the challenges with if we take some of the bank capacity, what does that mean? If we add additional dollars to the benefit charge, what does that mean? And what's some of the storylines that could go along with it? And so here's a precursor to what I'd like to talk about next week with the board is, you know, if we go and with additional revenue and how does that look and have a conversation about that, which will help me as I finish my portion of the budget process and bring you a budget from staff in the 1st of October. Hopefully, one that has that's in line with where the board, from a consensus perspective, is at. So I can bring something forward that we don't go back and, I mean, we're more aligned than we are apart. So I guess I'll pause with that, and that's a precursor for next year. And I wanted to give you an idea of some of the things we've done a little bit different this year, and then give you an idea of the things we're looking at and needs that the organization has identified. And when I mean that, I mean staff, not me, over the next 3 to 5 years. With that, I'll stop. Any questions? And I really do look forward to the conversation at the work session on the budget.
Commissioner Teoflo.
When we talk about raising taxes, one thing that I'd like to get is like for every $1 million that we raise taxes by, what does that mean for the median homeowner? Does that mean like their tax bill increased by like $25 a year?
Sure.
Commissioner Chin.
Well, I want to applaud you that we traditionally, Fire District 1, we always have been an innovative organization. And not just you, I think the board has encouraging you, right? A good example, community service. And to me, it's also prevention. At the end of the day, we got to know what the service we need to. I think the taxpayer doesn't care, or not, they don't care. They couldn't remember. If we don't get there in this with the response time, that is their care. So we need to be in a way that, I like you, I like the idea, keep on thinking about what can we do. A couple of things I think we can, changing your thinking, not changing, but like buying a boat and that type of thing, those are capital assets. So that should not be in the operation side of it. Basically, if we have a balance sheet, we don't write off the whole boat right away, right? That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Then your income statement, not income statement. Actually, I don't even like the word called revenue. I call it resources, right? If we get more resources, then we can invest. So if you can get into that, then a new boat, right now, if you buy a boat, you can write, boom, that go on your cash. That really not a proper accounting way. You cap it on the balance sheets and then you depreciate your boat, right? So that may make a difference. But also too, I think at the end of the day is technology. We should utilize that technology, right? And I like you. And then I think as a commissioner, I explained to people what the job commissioner. Commissioner don't look for today's work because you already have that set already. Commissioner have to say what direction we want to give to you and what asset, how many fire station we need, how do we managing, okay. I can see our area is going to expand, our whole organization will be expanding. So that's really good. You're thinking about that, not just what I'm doing now. For me, that's a real good organization. So I thank you for the proposal. I definitely will entertain whatever idea you have in there. So don't restrict yourself. Don't just.
No, I think being as honest and transparent with
Right.
what staff thinks we need organizationally, and the conversation with the board is it comes with price tag, and we understand that. Our job is to make sure we identify what the gaps are, and we've done our homework. We know where we become efficient. We know where technology has helped us. And at the end of the day, we should be able to justify the need and the ask. But there's also the reality of, there's fiscal things we have to talk about. And this organization, I'm actually really proud of this, and we don't talk about it enough. This is going to be an opportunity for the next couple of weeks to talk about how fiscally conservative, and I don't mean it that way. We are very judicious with the taxpayer dollars. I truly believe that, right? If you look at where we are with our levy rates, and if you look at where we are with the benefit charge, and you look at what our total equivalent is for the taxpayers we serve, and then look at what we provide for service, and then go look around at our neighbors, and if you look at that, we have we've done really, really well. In the 29 years I've been in this organization, we've done exceptionally well. And I'm actually really proud of this organization, and it makes this conversation a whole lot easier. Because I'm looking at the board, and you've made us do our job to ensure that we're bringing forward proposals that actually we've done our homework, and we've given you the full story, and the board and the board hasn't funded everything we've asked for either, right? That's good.
But
Right? We shouldn't get everything, but it's an awesome story.
Right.
And I'm proud of the fact that we've been fiscally smart. And I don't know of very many agencies who can, over the last 6 years, say they've raised taxes only 1% and covered the cost affiliated with operating an organization of our size. So, with that, I'm proud of this organization, and I'm looking at the board. I look at myself. I look at the rest of the staff. Labor gets this too, right? It takes all three legs. And I'm proud of it. And we don't tell that story very often. So, like I said, I look forward to the conversation next week.
But I want to emphasize in technology, AI now, I mean, there's a big use. I still remember when I first became a commissioner, you got pens and writing report, right? I mean, but yeah, it's expensive to buy the iPad, whatever it is, but look at the time we save. So that's a balance that we need to look at. Yeah.
Any questions for the chief on his comments about upcoming budget stuff? Okay, excellent. Thank you, chief. Let's see, that is the conclusion then of unfinished business, item 11. That moves us on to item 12, new business, and that starts with the firework ban position. And we have Public Information Officer Christy Velli to say a few words about that.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is in regards to a recent discussion that's been happening among the City of Linwood City Council. And there's a discussion on whether to re-examine the city's ban on fireworks, to make some changes to include certain types of fireworks, ground-based fireworks. So we have put together a letter to the mayor of Linwood, kind of reaffirming South County Fire's position on a fireworks ban. And so we request that the board approves that letter.
Any comments or questions from the board? Liaison Fisher.
Do we know what has stemmed this new conversation amongst them?
It's unclear what exactly stemmed the conversation. It's mainly being generated by Councilmember Decker. And he recently wrote an op-ed in the Linwood Times, kind of stating the case to re-examine the city's ban on fireworks. We should mention that back when our area was asked to vote on a possible county fireworks ban, the city of Linwood voted 60% yes. And so this has been the will of the voters to support a ban on fireworks.
That's good. And I don't want to point fingers or anything, but does that person not understand that ground fireworks start fires too and get knocked over and burn people and everything? Have we not tried to have that conversation? Just saying.
One of the other things is I often get asked, this is the second time from two totally different parties about formally where the board stands. And part of this was a specific request from Mayor Frizzell when we meet with her quarterly, and asked if we could, reaffirm the position of the board. And for me as the fire chief, if this is reaffirmed tonight, it gives me the ability to talk to folks that ask that question to me specifically as the fire chief. It's easy for me to answer from a fire chief's role. But it would be nice for the board if they reaffirm the position that I think I already know. And in my conversations as we continue to talk to the county about all those things, it'll be beneficial for me also to know from my seat that the board's position on fireworks is reaffirmed as I continue to have those conversations with other folks around the county.
Other question, Commissioner Rowland?
Do we have any data around the last, let's just say, 5 years of the number of fireworks related injuries that we've responded to each year? I'm looking for, I guess, I see the letter, but there's no real data to back up. This is still a problem, I'm just curious about that.
I know Shawnery and her team has the data. I don't have it in front of me. I know we've been tracking the number of calls we go on, the number of injuries we go on. I don't have that off the top of my head, Commissioner Rowland, but I know we've kept it for at least back to 2018. My guess is Shawnery has it going back many more years than that.
Gotcha. The reason I ask is because, if we're writing this letter to help, I guess, say, fight back against this effort to legalize either ground-based fireworks or otherwise, we may want to give them some numbers and some statistics, both locally and nationally, so that when they're having that conversation, they've got it. Whether it has to be in this letter or not, I have no real feeling one way or the other. But that's really what I think is going to help, set the tone when the counter argument will be, freedom and people being able to, tradition and all of the, the feel good, the emotional side of things, having the facts behind us as to why we stand this way, what we see every year. I think that'll really help bring power to the stance that we have. Thank you.
Commissioner Fernhoff?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Liaison Schwischer's comments, and also Commissioner Rowland as well, and stand with you with the notion that I think, without question, the idea that there's a distinguished line between ground or aerial fireworks, I think ground are much more likely to cause permanent physical damage. We've had a number of incidents this last year where people lost their hands, they lost their fingers. These do not come with aerial displays, and the stronger we can stand behind you on this, especially with the language, I think is paramount. And I think that's goes through the entire RFA, not just one particular city. That's just my opinion.
Any other questions, comments? I would move that we authorize the letter to Mayor Frizzell concerning fireworks and authorize the chair to sign the letter. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to do just that. Is there discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you on behalf of staff.
Thank you.
Next up is item number, sorry, we are still in new business, item 12B, the September 11 proclamation resolution. And you will find that at page 49 of your packet. And I didn't know who was going to talk about this one.
That would be me.
Go ahead. Sorry. You can say a few words about it.
What you have there is a proposed Patriot Day and National Day of Service and Remembrance Proclamation Resolution. This is in remembrance of September 11th and encourages everyone to observe a moment of silence, as we will at our September 11th memorial ceremony. So we do ask the board to adopt this resolution.
Are there any general questions or comments about the subject? If not, I would move the adoption of resolution 0903-2024-13, Patriot Day and National Day of Service and Remembrance Proclamation.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fernhoff. It's been moved and seconded to adopt that resolution. Is there discussion on the motion? Is there discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And if I may, I'd like to read the resolution for the record. Whereas on September 11, 2001, terrorists hijacked and then flew commercial airplanes into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, causing both to collapse, and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., inflicting severe damage. A fourth terrorist hijacked plane crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, when passengers who became aware of the attacks attempted to take the plane back. Whereas the lives of 343 firefighters, 60 police officers, and 2,753 civilians were cut short by these acts of terror. And whereas on September 11, 2001, and the days that followed, our country came together and was united in its resolve to help the families of these first responders and civilians who were never given the opportunity to live out their full lives. And whereas every year since, on September 11, we honor their memory and pay tribute to the first responders and citizens who answered the call to save lives with tremendous acts of courage with no hesitation. And whereas our fire authority and firefighters, with community support, erected a 9/11 monument in Fallen Firefighter Memorial Park outside Fire Station 17 in downtown Edmonds to stand as a permanent memorial to all those who lost their lives in the September 11 terrorist attacks. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the South County Fire Board of Commissioners that on this 23rd anniversary, we pay tribute to and remember all who lost their lives as a result of the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11, 2001. We encourage all to observe a moment of silence in their honor and reflect on the significance of this day. South County Fire will never forget. Approve this day. Thank you. Moving forward in the agenda, and I think we can, I know we're kind of near our break period, but we only have a few items left. I think we can push forward to the end. Moving forward in the agenda, we have item number 13, which is committee updates, starting with Capital Facilities and Commissioner Lawrence.
Nothing new since last report.
That short report, that's what we like. All right. Next report is Finance and Human Resources with Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, we'll have that on next Thursday. Most likely, we're talking a lot about budget.
That sounds good. Next up is Intergovernmental with Commissioner Wittes on Zoom.
How are you? We did not meet last week because this week because of the holiday. We're meeting Monday.
Very good. Thank you. And finally, then for committee reports, we have the Snow 911 report with Commissioner Fernhoff.
No new information will be meeting later this month. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. That moves us forward in the agenda to item number 14, which is commissioner comments. And I wanted to start with one commissioner comment. The Snow Isle Fire Commissioners, Chief Eastman mentioned them earlier this in the meeting. Snow Isle Fire Commissioners September meeting is this coming Thursday, 7 o'clock on Zoom. And I'll be sending out the Zoom link to all the fire commissioners, including everybody here, all the board members, later this evening. So that's 7 o'clock Zoom only. But we've also got a request from the Snow Isle Fire Commissioners if we would be willing to host the October meeting here, which is the first Thursday of October. I'm just getting that date for you. That's Thursday, October 3rd, 7 o'clock. It would be a hybrid meeting here in this room. Typically for the hybrid meetings, there are maybe 10 to 14, maybe about 12 commissioners that actually come in person and another 12 or so online for maybe a total of 24 in attendance total. Would there be any objection to us hosting the Snow Isle Fire Commissioners here for the meeting? Commissioner Lawrence?
Yeah, I object because I won't be able to make it.
You can come on Zoom.
You know, well, hopefully, yeah. No, that's good. I was kidding. I don't really object.
Any other comments or?
No, I just think it's great that we host them. I enjoy anytime we host them.
We haven't hosted since before coronavirus, so it's
Yeah,
been
I
a
know.
while. And in the past, we've usually done like once a year.
Right.
It was the
Take a
last
turn.
one. They had great hamburgers. So.
Yeah, it's been a while. Okay, so I'll remind you of it, but that'll come up for the first meeting, first Thursday in October. Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Fernhoff.
Yeah, just in recognition of 9/11, there's a lot of folks too that when we were attacked as a nation chose to join different forms of service. I noticed quite a number of our veterans in the room who ended up, I'm sure at some point, being part of the military and possibly called into action should we had more terrorist activity here in the United States. I myself and was motivated, and by December of that same year became part of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which started a near 14-year career. And that was all because of 9/11. So I just want to recognize everybody, whether you were in civilian service, military service, Those teams that were deployed on the National Disaster Medical System, the NDMS, to 9/11's Ground Zero. A good friend of mine is recovering from, but acquired cancer as a result of his deployment. So there are many stories out there, and really want to applaud everybody for that on this coming 9/11 day. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Furman. Any other commissioner comments? Liaison Swisher.
Well, first, you guys missed a great day at the Briar Horse Arena, where our Station 18 firefighters and some folks from 15 joined them for some horse training. And they got to ride horses as well. It was a fabulous day, and I went out and joined them for a little while and then watched them out my window for the rest of the time. But yeah, it was great. And there are actually other horse and we'll call it farm animal people within Briar who have reached out and want to meet with them some more to make sure that they know how to handle the animals that happen to live in Briar, because there are a lot more of them than people know. And so it was really neat, and I felt really good about helping them to organize that. And then I won't be here next Tuesday. I'm really sorry, because I'd really love to hear all of your ideas for the budget, but I'm going to be on vacation, so sorry.
I guess if you don't mind, Kurt Hilt, Captain Hilt, and his crew are the ones that started that conversation. And I don't know exactly how it all started, but it happened on a call where they came to a call and the family had horses. And they realized when they pulled up that they were dealing with one event that they were dealing with, and then they realized they caused another one as a result of what we do for a living and not understanding livestock like that. And it was Captain Hilt, and he brought in Station 15, and the crews actually appreciated the fact that now they do have an understanding of what impacts the fire truck makes on their livestock, how to make sure we do things that we don't make or create another event while we're dealing with the event we're on. The other piece is then if we do have fire that deals with livestock, how we need to manage that to not have a secondary problem. So I do think it'll be expanded a little bit as a result of Captain Hill, but that was done. That wasn't, I want you all to know that wasn't our brainchild sitting here in gold. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if it was the same call, but we had a fire probably about 5-6 years back near Lake Serene where as I was on the first engine that pulled up, engine 10, and I jumped out of the rig with the house was on fire, made my way around the backside to give a 360 look at the building and give a report. And just as I got around the other side, a horse just came ripping right past me. And so I had to get on quickly and make that radio announcement that that horse was on the loose heading towards the driveway, because we did have to open a fence to enter the property. And I'm not sure who was able to grab that fence, but that horse was very agitated, as you can imagine, and crews were kind of not sure what to do with that. And I'm not exactly sure who ended up handling that horse at the end, but that's a real life case scenario. It happens. And that might have been the same call that Kurt Hill was on as well.
Well, in Briar, we don't just have horses. As a matter of fact, a cow has moved in recently. We have llamas. If you ask some of our people, we have sheep, but they're not sheep, they're goats. We have lots of chickens. I believe there is a pig still. And if you really want to go back in time, at one point in time, we had an elephant that lived in Briar.
Oh, gee.
I'm glad that wasn't around when I was on that 360.
Very good. Any other commissioner comments? Any other Commissioner Chan?
Well, I've been really busy, like I said, starting Thursday. I went to a friend of mine who's having a nonprofit called Access, means mental, especially kids. And they were sponsored by Support 7 and them is regarding Jada, the person, the teenagers were shot in there. I always like to go to, less usually any after meeting, after fire meeting, I want to go there and see what the community, what do they say? Because we really do not have that many of chances to meet with the public. It was a pretty solemn. Of course, they're all sitting around in a circle. And I'm glad we have our representative, Megan Williams, in there. She was in CPL. I wasn't going to say anything, but at that time, I just felt I really appreciate Support 7. I kind of say that we put out the fire outside but they put out the fire inside in these people. So I'm pretty supporting this kind of mental, in there. They were trying to pass a law called Jada law. And I'm going to look at that. I'll come back to you all. So anyway, I felt it was well spent for me. It was on that afternoon. And then on Friday, we have the opening, the Linwood opening. I shake more hands of politicians. We have 2 senators, Maria Kenwell and also Mervyn there, and county executive, not just Snohomish, King County, and everybody there. The whole thing was really good. And I finally remember. I just have been, and we have a cultural event of all the 10. You got to miss that. I'm passing on to you. So this is all the event. I'm responsible for it, but anyway, but they got Latin dances, lion dances, and all this stuff. And the last one was the Asian Elvis. You got to miss all of that. And then on Saturday, one of the temple I belong to, holding the conventions up in the new convention center. So George Harris, he's the president of the Linwood Council, and I were there, and just to welcome everybody. That's really great. So I'm just my excuse that the last few days I'm just crazy, but I'm so glad everything's done. I'm back to normal now. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Rowland.
Just wanted to officially say congratulations to our new DCs. I've had the privilege of being able to interact with them on the volunteer side of things, and couldn't be prouder of them. Looking forward to seeing what you guys, new ideas, what things you have to come up with in your new positions. Good luck.
Any other commissioner comments?
I got additional comments. Of course, on the day of the opening, guess what I saw? Shawnery. And this volunteer, they have these fire trucks in there. People are lining up to see that. Are you trying to recruiting those people?
There were only 12.
No, but what I'm trying to emphasizing is that visibility. I think that's critical because every single event I went to the Mill Creek, every event, our exposure is so good. And that's why I'm asking you, is there any different where the higher percentages are? Somehow I feel majority, I mean, we exposed really to the metro area really good.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's a good correlation. So we'll look at that. I get your question now better.
Yeah.
With that. So we'll look at it. Shawnery will know probably off the top of her head.
But following that, I think to me, education is important. Preventing, we always talk about, right? The senior citizen never had that fall. That fire never started. But except that Sean and I had, can you keep data that why didn't they call? But I think that's one of the important ingredient that we have. Thank you.
All right, there being no further commissioner comment. Commissioner Fernhoff.
I just wanted to piggyback on Commissioner Chan's sort of characterization of the day. We process at that event at the light rail probably nearly 75 to 100 kids. That's parents. Those are constituents. We passed out lots of educational material through our public outreach effort as well. So the impact that we had just on that one event because of the volume was extreme. We had 2 Still alarm medical calls that Air 15 initiated as well. Both resulted in a transport. So our penetration into the community and our presence is really positively received. And thank you, Commissioner Chan.
All right, there being no further commissioner comments, our next meeting is next Tuesday, work session meeting, 7 o'clock. And with that, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, that's next Thursday?